Hello everybody, Sam here. This is episode 30 of the VictorPrep Vocab podcast. 30 episodes, that's quite a lot. That's 30 times 4 words. Well, once you've done this episode's words. So 120 words. That's pretty good, but there's a long way to go. So let's get started by covering the words from episode 29. Those were wan. Wan means an unnatural or sickly colour of someone. Their face is pale, suggesting ill health or fatigue or unhappiness. Laud means to praise, to applaud or acclaim someone. Exonerate, that means to absolve someone from blame for a crime or wrongdoing, to find someone innocent of something. And our final word from last time was analgesia. That means absence of a sense of pain or the inability to feel pain. Now we're going to move on to our new words. And our first word is officious. That is spelled O-F-F, off, I-C-I-O-U-S, officious. Now, this may take a little bit of explanation, but officious is a word that refers to someone who usually has some authority, and they use that authority in an annoying, overbearing, or domineering way. And especially with regard to matters of little importance or trivial matters. Some synonyms are self-important, bumptious, self-assertive, overbearing, domineering, and overzealous. Let's go into a little bit more detail. So, can you imagine someone in your life who maybe has a bit more authority, or they're in a position of authority, but they use that authority or use their position to be annoyingly petty with trivial matters, or they interfere a lot in your business without you really needing or wanting that help? I remember one of my friends who's a college student told me recently that an official from the college had come out to tell her off because she was stood on the wrong patch of grass next to one of the college buildings. And this patch of grass, apparently you're not allowed to stand on. And I think this official who told her you couldn't stand on this piece of grass, despite there being nothing special about the piece of grass, was being officious. They were being assertive of their authority in an annoyingly domineering way, and it was quite a trivial matter. It was just a piece of regular grass. So yes, if you can think of someone who has used their authority or position in that sort of annoying way, or being meddlesome, or aggressively offering their services or help when it's unwanted or unneeded, you have then encountered an officious person. Our second word today is cloying. It's spelled C-L-O-Y, cloy, I-N-G, cloying. Now, cloying is almost always used as its adjective form, which is cloying. But cloying comes from a verb, which is to cloy, which is almost never used. So we'll talk about the adjective form, cloying, but I will just briefly describe what the verb means. The verb means to disgust or sicken someone with an excess of sweetness, richness, or being overly sentimental. So the adjective form, cloying, means something that is too sweet or too nice. So you might say, how can something be too nice or too sweet? Well, if you imagine a movie that's a sweet movie, but it's just too sweet, it's too goody-goody, too many nice things happen, it's so utterly unrealistic, it's just almost too much. And that could be described as being cloying. You could even have something that was physically too sweet. So a perfume or a smell that was too sweet, it was overpowering your senses, it was almost disgustingly sweet. That would be described as being cloying. The same with food. You could have food that would be too sweet, it could be described as being cloying. I would say, though, that in general, cloying is more often used for something like a movie or a story, a novel, than it is used with something like a food. It can be used for food or a perfume or a smell, but yes, generally I would say it's more used for something non-physical, like that novel was too sweet, it was almost cloying. Some synonyms are sickly, syrupy, saccharine, and oversweet. Just for my own interest though, I did a quick Google search for movie reviews containing the word cloying in, and I found a review in The Telegraph of the movie Annie from a few months ago, and they described the movie as being cloying. And I think it was just too sweet for them. The little girl, Annie, in the movie was too sweet, too overly nice, and it put them off the movie. Our third word is rarefy. Rarefy. Rarefy is spelled R-A-R-E, rare, F-Y. Rarefy. It's not rarefy, even though it looks like it's spelled like it would be sounded as rarefy. It just is. It's just pronounced rarefy. I'm not sure why, but it's pronounced rarefy, not rarefy. Anyway, rarefy means to make something more rare, means also to make something more thin, more porous, or less dense. So, the major usage of this word is usually to describe air which is thinner, especially with altitude. So, those of you out there who are into science will know that as you go up in altitude, like if you climb a mountain, the air becomes more thin. And you could describe the air at altitude as being rarefied, i.e. the past tense of rarefy. And you'll find if you look up the word rarefy and its usage, it's always used for people to say rarefied air. In fact, I would say it's almost unusual to see rarefied or rarefy being used for anything other than describing air at altitude. It obviously can mean lots of other things, but the usage is so intertwined with this idea of rarefied air that often it's the first thing that people think of when you say the word rarefied or rarefy. The good news about this word, though, is it sounds exactly like it means. If I made up a word like goodify, meaning I make something more good, then you can easily think rarefy, I make something more rare, or I make it thinner or less common. And that should be all you need to remember this word. It's quite easy to remember, but also note that in usage, it's usually used when referring to scientific processes or physical elements. It's a more scientific or technical word, so it's not often one you'll hear in common speech. Now, our final word for today is one of my favorite words, and it's a word that refers to something that most people have done at one point in their lives. The word is malingerer. Malingerer. It is spelled M-A-L-I-N, malin, G-E-R-E-R, gerer. Malingerer. A malingerer is a person who malingers. What does malinger mean? Well, malinger means to pretend to be ill, so you don't have to go to school, or you don't have to go to work, or you don't have to do whatever you're supposed to be doing. So, a malingerer is a person who pretends they're sick so they don't have to do something. Some synonyms of malingerer are shirker, idler, layabout, or loafer. Now, you could probably remember malingerer by thinking mal, which comes from the French meaning bad, basically, and linger, meaning to stay in one spot. So, mal, bad, lingerer, or linger, staying in one spot. So if you're malingering, you're at home pretending to be ill, you're also being bad because you're not doing something you should be doing and you've lied to say you're sick. Now let's do a quick review of the words from today. Those were officious. That means being assertive of authority in an annoying, overbearing, domineering way, especially about some petty little thing that doesn't matter so much. Cloying, that means too sweet, an excess of richness, or too romantic, or too sentimental. Rarefy, that means to become more rare or less dense, often used in the sense of rarefied air, which means air that is very thin at a high altitude. And our final word was malingerer, which is a person who pretends they're ill or sick to get off work or to get off school. Now let's move on to our test sentences. Just listen to each sentence and then work out which word I'm referring to. The romantic movie wasn't particularly well received by the public. It was almost too sweet, and the love story was so exaggerated as to make many audience members cringe with embarrassment. Jane made the most of all the authority she had by being bossy and interfering in the business of all of her employees. She didn't seem to understand how much her actions annoyed them. As one climbs higher into the mountains, the air becomes more thin, and as such, it becomes difficult to breathe and catch one's breath. As a teenager, Frank would sometimes pretend to have a headache so he didn't have to go to school. Just a super quick wrap up now, because this podcast has gone on a little longer than I would do normally. Thank you all so much for listening. We've done 30 episodes. That's awesome. There's a lot more to come, a lot more words. Please leave a review, as always, if you haven't done already, on the iTunes page. And don't forget to like the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/VictorPrepLearning. Thank you all so much for being listeners. I really appreciate it. Email me at sam.fold@gmail.com. Thank you. Bye-bye.